Welcome to Math with Mr. J. In this video, I'm going to be covering decimal models. So we're going to start with a model and then write the decimal that model represents. And we have 5 examples that we're going to go through together in order to get this down. Now in this specific video, we're going to be working with tenths and hundredths. So let's jump into number 1 here, where we have one big full square here. Now, if that whole square was filled in, that would represent one whole, but we don't have the full square filled in. Now, for number 1, that square is cut into 10 equal pieces, so we're going to be working with tenths. Each one of those pieces equals 1/10, but we have multiple filled in. Let's see how many tenths number 1 represents. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tenths. So we would write that as a decimal like this. We do not have a whole number, so we can put 0, then decimal 7. So 7 tenths. We can also write it as a fraction, and it would look like this, 7 over 10, or 7 out of 10, or we would properly say it, 7 tenths. Now both that decimal and the fraction hold the same value. They have the same exact name as well, 7 tenths. The only difference, one's a decimal, one's a fraction. So let's move on to number 2, where again, that full square, the big square, represents one whole, but we don't have the whole square filled in. So we need to represent something less than a whole with either a decimal or a fraction. Now number 2, we have 100 equal pieces within that full square, so we're going to be working with hundredths. Each one of those pieces is worth 1/100th. So let's see how many we have. And we'll start by counting the columns. Each column has 10 hundredths. We don't need to count each individual piece, so we can go 10, 20, 30, and then count the individuals. So 31, 32, 33, 34, 35 hundredths. And we would write it as 0 wholes, decimal, 35 hundredths. Or in fractional form, 35 over 100, 35 hundredths. So on to number 3, where again we're going to be working with hundredths. Now this time we don't have any full columns, so we can just count the individual hundredths. And for number 3, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hundredths. A very common mistake would be writing it as 0 wholes, decimal, and then a 6 in the tenths place. So that represents 6 tenths. We don't want 6 tenths, we want 6 hundredths. So we need 0, decimal, a 0 in the tenths to push that 6 over to the hundredths place. So 6 hundredths, or in fractional form, 6 over 100. Now, numbers 4 and 5, we're going to involve whole numbers here. Number 4, we have one full square filled in here. So that represents 1 whole. And then our second square, we don't have the full square filled in, so that's where our decimal or fraction comes into play. So this is going to be tenths. Let's see how many tenths we have filled in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we need to write out 1 and 6 tenths. And it's going to look like this, 1 and 6 tenths. Or in fractional form, 1 and 6 tenths. On to number 5 here, where we have 2 full squares filled in. So this is 1 whole and then 2 wholes. Now as far as the decimal or fractional square here, we can start by counting by tens, because each of those columns represent 10 hundredths. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 81, 82. So we have 2 and 82 hundredths. So 2 and 82 hundredths, or fractional form, 2 and 82 hundredths. So there you have it. There's how we go from a decimal model to the decimal or fraction that model represents. I hope that helped. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, peace.